everybody. Welcome to another Midnight Sun Thursday, not a Monday. Lori, are we permanently on Thursday now? Okay, we'll let you know. But anyway, for those of you, if this is your first time, welcome. Welcome to another Midnight Sun. Wow, you can hear me. It's not a Monday. Lori, are we permanently on Thursday now?
Oh, see, look, you're getting feedback. Wait a minute. Hold on.
Okay.
Mine's not. Here we go. Go.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Technical difficulties. It happens. For those of you who this is your first time with us, welcome. This is presented by the Twilight Lexicon, which Lori is on tech duty right now, figuring that out. I'm Amy Taylor. I am known as Oh My Carlisle on Instagram, Twitter, or Tumblr, if you use that still. I worked on what was his Golden Eyes back in the day, and then became Page to Premiere. So I was around for a lot of the different Twilight events and was living in California at the time, so went to a whole bunch. Right now, every Tuesday night, Mel, who I'll introduce in a moment, we do Twilight Tuesdays on Instagram at 7 p.m. Pacific. We are rereading the books, and we end up talking about a whole bunch of Twilight stuff. So we're on Eclipse chapters. We'll get back to it.
It's underneath my computer.
We're in Eclipse. Come join us on Instagram Live on Tuesday nights. That's my spiel. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mel, and maybe I'll check and see what chapters we're on.
Hi, I'm Melissa or Mel. My Twitter is just Rosemally, but my Instagram is Rosemally85. Somebody stole my original one, but I know. But back in the day, I ran the Facebook page Twilight Addicts Only, which basically is non-existent anymore. And currently I run, or co-run rather, Ladies of Isle Esme, and you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Instagram is ladies of _ Isle Esme.
Awesome, and we're on chapters 19, 20, and 21 next week.
I'm like, we're close to 20, right?
Yeah, we're getting there. Heather, welcome back.
Hello, I have a different color hair now.
You too.
And I've been quarantined, you know. I'm Heather. I was not with a fan site during the Twilight peak. After that, I was with Fanspired. We did a bunch of other stuff, and you can find me at It's HD Gilbert, pretty much anywhere and everywhere, because I wanted to rebrand myself recently. So.
And we have some new faces with us tonight. Shelley, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm Shelley Harper. I started out in the Twilight Lexicon message boards, and we all became friends, and I lost my job. That was back in 2008, and I started doing PR with Lori and Laura for the Lexicon. And we worked at the conventions together and just did a whole bunch of stuff. And basically everything I do now all started, and I met all of the people that I am now in business with because of the Twilight Lexicon and the Twilight fandom. My company is Conquest Journals. We make Supernatural, Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, Sabrina, journals, planners, notepads, everything.
Twilight planners. Why are there no Twilight planners?
We don't have that license, but you know, we're kind of Warner Brothers people right now. So, and so you can find me on Twitter at Quest_Journals, because somebody took Conquest Journals there. But on Instagram, we're Conquest Journals, and our website is conquestjournal.com.
Well, I think we're gonna have a future discussion about merchandise. So,
okay. All right.
And then Emma, welcome from very late where you are. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Emma. Some of you might recognize me from back in the day as Nutty Madam. I used to make some reaction videos for the different trailers that came out and various different things. I went to conventions and stuff as well. So nowadays my Twitter is it's Emma Doinkle, and my Instagram is exactly the same. The Twitter used to be Nutty Madam, but then it got shut down. It was this whole big thing, but yeah, it's different now. And aside from that, I'm still very much a fan, and I'm really glad to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you here. You know, I realized I didn't actually introduce the topic tonight, which is characters. So, Lori, I'll hand it over to you.
I'm Lori from the Twilight Lexicon. You can find me at Twilight Lexicon. That's all of our Instagram, Twitter, that's all of it. But when we did the poll last week to find out what people wanted to talk about, it was a really close contest between books to movies, the difference between books and movies, and character discussions. And so I said, well, then let's just do that this week. And it's turning out to be, we should tell everybody, but like behind the scenes, all of us have read through the questions for this week and we're like, these are hard. These are hard. Usually it's like, oh, I know exactly what I'm saying. These are hard. So bear with us as we dive into the characters. Yes. So this is our character discussion. So the first question, and this is like, seems like an obvious, we're going to go around and talk about who your favorite character is from the books and why that's your favorite character. And if you have like a favorite quote or a favorite moment or something like that, then share that. I'm sure we are all on pins and needles who Amy is going to say. But actually, Heather gets to go first.
Terrifying. I was terrified to answer this. So I have to say for the books, for consistently all the books, I liked Alice in every single book. She's like the only one that it didn't drive me crazy at least once, to the point where I was just like, oh, I hate you. Like Bella kind of annoys me, Edward kind of annoys me, Jacob, I just could like, ugh. But Alice just really like, I really jived with her. I felt like I wanted to be truly friends with her. And I liked how much more descriptive her and Bella's relationship was in the books than in the movies. But my favorite quote is Edward from the books. And it's when, I think it's like, why are you so eager for eternal damnation or something like that? Like, I love that quote. I think it is hilarious for some reason. And so it's like, doesn't equate to my favorite book character, but it's my favorite quote in the books.
Eternal damnation is exactly what you're thinking when you're falling in love.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Amy.
Well, Arrow. No. It's no surprise to anybody that my favorite character is, of course, Dr. Carlisle Cullen. And that was from reading the first book. I was kind of like, I don't necessarily care about this Bella and Edward, like teenagers, whatever. Like, okay, ooh, who's this doctor that walked in around the corner that she's describing as even hotter than how she describes Edward the first time? And then like learning about his history. I mean, I wish, we'll get into this, but like, I wish you got Carlisle's perspective on his history, not Edward's telling Carlisle's story, but that's a whole other thing. And I also wish it was in the movie, but oh well. I didn't want to mess it up this week, so I actually looked up the quote that I could not get out last time. Like everything in life, I just had to decide what to do with what I was given, which is from New Moon, when Carlisle's talking with Bella, when he's stitching her up. So that is my favorite quote.
Mel?
So I don't know how many people can actually see the quotes behind me, but that is I actually have two favorite characters. My first one is how my user handle was derived, which is Rosalie Hale. Combination of my name plus hers equals Rosemary. But she was, from the very beginning, the character that I was just like, there's something about her. She's misunderstood. She's not just how Edward is perceiving her to Bella. And I mean, Bella gives pretty great detail on her looks. So it's not like she had that opinion formed before Edward came into the picture for her. And my favorite quote from her is, "Over my pile of ashes." And then my other favorite character is Kate from the Denali Coven. I don't know what it was the first time that she was introduced in Breaking Dawn, and sadly she only gets one book. But she was just somebody that once I got to like read a little bit about her, and then I read more further we got into Breaking Dawn, I was just like, yes, I love her so much. She's so sassy. That's my kind of character. And my favorite quote of hers is, "Jane's mine. She needs a taste of her own medicine."
All right, Shelley.
Okay, well, I'm so cliche. My favorite character is Edward. It always has been. It always will be. Edward. I mean, why? Because he's Edward.
'Cause Edward.
And
I don't think you'd get anyone that would like have a problem with that.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm the kind of girl who I know in a lot of the fandoms that I love that a lot of people love the quirky side characters, and that's all good. But I'm always like, Harry Potter is literally my favorite character. Sorry, I know it's controversial. Like Buffy's it, man. She is my favorite. So Edward. And I don't have a favorite quote because I can just say pretty much everything that he said in the books are like, yeah.
Love it.
There you go.
All right, Emma.
I think back in the day, I was like everybody else. My favorite character was Edward. I loved that kind of chaotic thing that Jacob had, where he just, at a certain point, he just kind of endeavored to make as much trouble and be as much of a problem as possible. And I definitely empathize with that. Yeah. But like, over time, I've come to kind of appreciate quotes less and less. And instead, I kind of have this weird, like, I guess, synergy with the character, like the way that Stephanie wrote Jasper, because I don't know whether it was an intentional thing or not, but the way that he's constantly nervous and constantly worried about everything, it translates really well to the feeling of having really bad anxiety, and that definitely, I feel that. So just kind of that nervousness about being in the room and constantly thinking the worst possible thing is going to happen. I get that. And that's what I always connected with kind of more and more.
I like that. All right, so that leaves me, my favorite character. I am a villain fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a villain fan. My favorite characters, my favorite fandom is Star Wars, and it's either Darth Vader or the Emperor. I can't get enough of either one of them. But so in this, it shouldn't be a surprise that Aro is my favorite character. Followed a really close second, I think, by Bella. But Aro is just creepy, fantastical creepy, and just wonderfully creepy. And I thought he was very well played by Michael Sheen with his little silly laugh. And my favorite Aro quote is, "I love a happy ending."
It's so sinister.
It's just so creepy.
That.
There was something strangely endearing about him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why, but he's like horrible, but you're also like, oh, I don't know.
That weird, like, second meaning underneath everything he says, you just kind of feel it.
Yeah.
One of the very first Twilight related things that I ever got from that creepy convention that you and I went to, Shelley.
Yes.
Shelley can back me up on that terribly creepy convention. It was somebody had taken pieces of the book, like they'd ripped up a book and made jewelry out of pieces of the book. And I have a necklace that says Aro right in the middle. I mean, there's text around it, but Aro's right in the middle.
Yeah, it was super cool. That was one of the that convention. And by the way, that was not put on by the company who did.
Oh, I told them that.
Okay, yeah. It was like a one-off situation. There were fangs there. There was a fang.
That's the one I was at.
Yeah, Mel. Yeah. No, it was not good.
All right, so. Is there a character that you felt was like a throwaway character or a character that you really couldn't stand during the saga, and why? So we'll start with Mel.
Okay, so it's kind of more of a group of people. There's literally no reason that Stephanie needed to give names for all these humans because we get nothing of who they are, why they're there. We just know that they're friends of the characters that we do actually get more introduction to, like Eric and Mike and Jessica, Lauren, but everybody else, like, who are you people? Why are you here?
We had that recently in one of the books. We were like, who is this human?
Yeah. The first time that somebody told me to read Twilight, like the first 2 chapters, I'm like, oh my gosh, these teenagers are boring. It wasn't until we got like away from the humans that I started to enjoy it. All right, Heather, you're next.
I controversially or not will say Jacob. I just really feel like the book in the series could have been totally fine without him. I really had a hard time with his character. It reminded me of an ex-boyfriend that I had, and I think that was like scarring for me. And every time we'd go through his perspective, I was just bored as hell. I just couldn't get through it. And New Moon is my worst book. I cannot read it. I love the movie because you get to see Robert Pattinson like a lot more than you should, but I just can't. I don't know. I've imagined the book series without him, and I'm like, I'm okay with that. And I realize that a lot of people will probably hate me for that.
There's some people in chat that are agreeing with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys.
All right, Emma.
I never really felt like there was, not so much in the books, but certainly for me anyway, in the movies, I felt like some of the members of the wolf pack, it just seemed so like, okay, Seth and Leah were kind of fleshed out, and you did get to see some stuff from Sam, but the rest of them, it just felt like, oh hi, this is Jacob's gang. Like, you didn't, they're such rich characters, and you just didn't get to see any of that. And it really left a lot out. I felt like it could have been so much more. So I don't feel like it would be that different without one or two of them. And that's a shame, because they should have been a really big part of Jacob's part of the story.
They just kept multiplying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Kept getting more of
It's
them.
like, okay, here's some topless guys. Okay, great. But like, why?
Here's some jorts.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, they're really hungry now. Oh, okay. Great.
Okay, Amy.
Bella. No, I'm kidding. From a throwaway character standpoint, I have a throwaway versus a can't stand. The throwaway would be Bree Tanner. Like, did we really need a book on Bree Tanner? We know more about Bree Tanner than we know about like most of the Cullens. Like, why? That one infuriates me. We know more about Bree Tanner than we know about Esme or Emmett from the books. So that one, and then from a one that I get to a point where I can't stand, it would be Jacob. Like, not that he's important to this, like being able to tell this whole story, but the one moment where I was ready to throw the book would involve Jacob. So, or throw any of the books was involved with Jacob. Yeah. So that is the one character that drives me crazy at times. Couldn't stand. But then also love at times too.
Oh. Shelley.
Okay, Mel, I'm so sorry. I hate the Denali Coven. I don't know if that's going to be super controversial. I did not like them in the books. I know they were critical.
The whole coven?
All of them. They irritated me when they showed up, when you found out, later on when we were fans that Edward ran. What the, no. And then, I know that was like Irina caused the big final conflict, right? But so we needed that for the story. But, had she not been how she was, everything would have been okay. I mean, yeah, I did not like them. And I wished they were not in the story. There you go.
They moved the story forward.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I agree with you guys about the wolf pack. I agree about the humans. If I have to pick like an actual character, again, Mel, you're gonna hate me. My least favorite Cullen is Rosalie. Now,
it's okay. A lot of people's are.
That as the story progressed, when we got her backstory to help find out why she was the way she was, that helped a lot. And I loved that she took such a front role in Breaking Dawn. But in Twilight and New Moon, because she basically causes the problems that, like, she tattletales and is the whole reason why Edward went to kill himself. And
yeah, that's such a good point, Lori. I'm kind of like leaning now towards your opinion.
Yeah, until Eclipse, she just kind of comes across as like the nasty girl that's there to cause problems, and why?
And it's probably stemming from my own jealousy of how beautiful she is, because beautiful people tend to be like, I don't like them because they're just so beautiful and they get by on how beautiful they are. And so, yeah, although all the vampires are beautiful, but Rosalie, like, just, you know.
She takes it to another level for sure.
Yes. Okay, so is there a character that you felt didn't translate well to the screen? Or flip side, do you think there was one that was better on screen than the books? So now we're specifically looking at a character in the book didn't translate well on screen, or a character in the book was so much more appealing on screen. Like, for example, in the Harry Potter books, I could not stand Umbridge. I didn't understand how she was even a villain.
Agreed.
And then I saw that movie and I'm like, oh, she's so creepy.
She's terrible. Yeah.
Nailed it.
One of my favorite, hated that character in the book. That character on screen is so creepy. So something like that, book to screen, either translated well or didn't. We're gonna start with Emma. You get to go first this time.
Oh, okay. I think the most obvious one for me is probably Carlisle. That I felt like kind of in the books he was such a well fleshed out character, and there was so much history there, and he really comes across as this kind of really fatherly figure and genuinely caring and kind of building this great family. And there's so much there that I felt like didn't translate sometimes to the movies. He was a great character and Peter did a great job playing him, but there was just kind of something missing. It didn't feel like he was this epic patriarch like he is in the books. It kind of felt like, here's this guy that built the family. Okay, now back to the love story, which was like, it didn't feel very true to him because there's so much there.
Amy, you're next on the list. You gonna say the same thing?
I wasn't going to say the same thing, but I mean, I agree. I love Peter and I love him as Carlisle, but I've always said too, that it's not exactly, well, I mean, 23 versus what Peter was like 35 and obviously loves it. There was a lot of things they changed there. And again, like I would have hoped that his backstory would have been there, but it wasn't. For me, one that came out better on screen than in the books that I think we all suddenly were like, wow, we care about this character is Garrett. And that way I would say give that totally to Lee Pace. Although there was some moments in the books that I think some of them may have even been filmed of kind of like his stand on the field that doesn't get in there, but I think like Lee Pace's performance definitely upped the game for Garrett. From a character that you felt didn't translate well on screen, we talked about this last week, but Jacob, that Taylor Lautner was not 6'7", did not look like he was 25 years old. He did not have that sort of manly presence that also went to like little boy in the same way. And one more controversial one, Rochelle versus Bryce. I say Bryce played it exactly like in the book. Rochelle does not.
I agree.
I'm done.
For a Shell fan, so.
Can we talk about that or not? Okay, Shelley.
Okay, so I was gonna, I totally agree about Carlisle. Actually, I was what Emma said, because I happened to flip by Twilight on TV the other day last weekend, and it was that moment when Carlisle walks in the room. And I just remember being like so disappointed, like on screen. And I know that sounds horrible to say, but he did not have the presence that the character had. And I don't know if Peter wasn't given the right stuff to work with, or if it was a makeup situation. It just didn't work out. Yeah, it just didn't work out. Because I love the character of Carlisle in the books. My favorite, though, adaptation of a character that I liked way more in the movies is Charlie. I love the way he was played. There was an endearing thing. I mean, Charlie was fine in the books. He was good, but there was just something super alluring about screen Charlie that was fun. And, he brought some attitude to it. I really liked it.
Yep. Mel.
So one that I don't think translated as well as it absolutely should have was Alice. There's so much behind her in the books, and you get basically none of that on screen. You don't get the like little quips, the little friendship that she formed with Bella, the back and forth even with Edward. You don't get any of that. It was almost like the whole screenwriting was just like, yeah, throw her away. Bring her in when we need her, but then just throw her away otherwise. But yeah, Shelley, I would have to agree definitely on Charlie, Billy Burke. He definitely brought that character to life. And I know Amy and I discussed it this week that there was a very controversial moment in Eclipse where we both kind of hated him, which I'm really glad that they left that out, or rather reworded it so that it didn't make him the bad guy, because I love Billy.
Yeah. Scream Billy was great. Scream Billy was great. And I want to actually talk about your Alice comment, because I totally agree. But even as Ashley was playing her, instead of playing that like little smart, fun twist, even to the few phrases she did get, Ashley didn't really play her like that. She played her more like a very innocent, like, no, Alice was smart. Alice was, she was a very strong character in the books, like one of the strongest in the family. So, I just don't think she was played with the strength that she really should have been.
They like made her a manic pixie dream girl in the movies.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. She had, I think, second to maybe Carlisle and Esme, she had such a huge impact on putting the family together and helping them move forward. And you didn't get any of that. She was just this, ditzy girl, and it didn't know.
All right, Heather.
I think Seth didn't translate well to screen. I really felt there was a lot of missed opportunity there, and you had Boo Boo, and who's like, I remember being so stoked when he was cast, and then I was so disappointed in the fact that you don't really get to see his relationship with Edward, and you kind of miss out about his banter with Jacob, and there's just so much, if we're gonna cut the wolf pack, I'm fine with that, but if we're not, let's give them some screen time, let's have there be something. And for Breaking Dawn, it really felt like if you're gonna put it into two movies, you should have kind of the space to explore a bit more of that, at least from my perspective. But I will say I thought Jessica / Lauren was better in the movies because of Anna Kendrick. I think I really didn't even consider her to be in existence in the books. I was just like, oh yeah, bitchy high school girls, okay, whatever. But then you get into the movies and you're just like, Anna Kendrick is killing it. This is amazing. She just totally gave her a full, very in-depth personality that I don't think that character had in the script. It really felt like something kind of in the same way that Billy Burke did it with Charlie, where he really put his heart into it and gave it. And I love Anna for that. I met her once and I was like, oh my gosh, I had to tell her because I was like, this is great and I love you and I thank you.
But that just
what was she like with that?
She was super chill. It was at Sundance 2 years after Twilight had ended. It was 2013, 2014. And she was just so receptive and wonderful about that. And I wasn't really expecting it because I was kind of you're probably going to think this is crazy. I'm doing other stuff now. But I think she definitely acknowledges it as something that helped her boost. So she's definitely thankful for it. But she was stoked. I was just a fun little fangirl at that time.
He does the best Kristen Stewart impression.
She really does.
It's so good.
Okay, so you guys have all taken my answers, which is why I always put myself last. So because I would agree that the best character from the book that I didn't care about that in the movie I loved was Charlie, and I agree that Jacob's character didn't translate as well as it could have. But okay, I'm gonna try to find something new, a different character to talk about. A character that I felt, and maybe it's just because I spoke to him a couple times and heard his behind the scenes process on the character. The character that I just love is Marcus, because you just don't even really pay attention to the other Volturi that are there, because Aro's oh, I'm Aro. Marcus, the way that Christopher Heyerdahl plays Marcus, especially when he goes, finally, he dies.
You just feel that he's just done.
Yeah.
He put so much thought into it. If you ever pay attention, Marcus is wearing bedroom slippers. He doesn't even have on shoes because he doesn't care.
He's literally a grumpy old man.
Yeah. so ready to die. Just so
And
ready.
he's the one that he asked for those. He's like, can I just have bedroom slippers? Because I don't think this guy would even get dressed.
It's so good.
Yeah, so there's a character that I thought from book to screen was even better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there a point that you didn't like your favorite character? Like, did they do something that you didn't like, or a moment really made you rethink the character? So now we're getting like nitty gritty on those favorite characters that you talked about. Or like in my part, my favorite character was a bad person anyway. Was there like a character that should be a favorite that you made you rethink that, like Edward or Bella or Jacob, or that made you rethink them as a character? So Amy, you get to start this one off.
I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, is there a moment? I'm like, I was thinking no, but then I was like, we haven't gotten to rereading Breaking Dawn yet, but the whole, when they kind of get back from the honeymoon and Carlisle seems to be on Edward's side versus backing up Bella's choice, and is at odds with Esme, my second favorite character. That was kind of like probably the one moment where I might have been like, about Carlisle would be in sort of him back, said his support for Edward or that versus Bella's choice.
But I think that's the doctor in him.
But a doctor also, I think, needs to think about what the patient wants.
Is that the doctor or is it the father?
Yeah.
I think it's the father in him being on his son's side.
Because kind of they talk about being sort of like Esme's backing Bella, Carlisle's backing Edward. So
he couldn't see what was inside her anyway. He didn't know what was inside her. There's that whole pregnancy thing was just
but like to force her to, when her decision is she wants to keep the baby or keep whatever it is inside of her, and she feels very strongly about it, and she has sort of, the women are backing her up. I don't know where Emmett and Jasper are in this. And you've got Rosalie and Esme backing her up, and you've got Carlisle and Edward over here. And yeah, I would support what Bella wants as the mother there, or the whatever, it's her body. So
true.
That would be the one where I'm like, yeah, I kind of was at odds with Carlisle a little bit. I understand his concern for her not knowing what it is, but also like the idea of like forcibly doing something against her will.
Shelley, how about you?
Well,
did you do anything bad?
I mean, when he left, right? I was like, that's completely asinine. What a horrible thing to do to Bella. Yeah, I hated that. I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. So he made arguably like the worst decision out of any of the characters, by picking up the family and leaving. I don't really know, it was weird for that character for me, because he loved her so much. If he loved her so much, he would also have understood that that was going to hurt her too. So, and if he was worried about keeping her safe, wouldn't it be safer for him to be around her than not? I mean, I know all of the other sides of that story, like, well, being in his presence, I mean, he alone could just kill her. And then the trouble that his whole world brings to her, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I get it. And he thinks she's like this fragile human and she's going to get over it and forget him in, a year, which is like a minute for him. But still, bad decision. And it didn't really seem to fit with how he felt the whole rest of the series, basically.
Having been able to look at Forever Dawn, for any fan that might be watching this that doesn't know what Forever Dawn is, Forever Dawn was the original sequel to Twilight. She wrote Twilight, then she wrote Forever Dawn. And Forever Dawn is like 100 pages of Bella and Edward just kind of being happy. And then they get married and she gets pregnant, and all of the stuff that we know from Breaking Dawn kind of exists. It's like the second half, and all of the covens show up and all that. So that 100 pages of happiness where Edward doesn't leave her, it's sugar saccharin, and there's a reason why she rewrote it, because it's just bad. And Edward leaving her makes the choice for them to get married more necessary, I think. And so I think that's why Stephanie as an author did it.
Mm-hmm.
And it ups the stakes, that's why Bella wants to be with him. That's why Edward wants to be with her, because they tried it apart and it was so bad. But still, yeah, I don't like that he left her.
Yeah, and I know actually my 18-year-old son and I are watching The Last Kingdom on Netflix, and we're talking about the hero's journey, and we talked about how in so many of the stories the hero's journey is loss and suffering. They have to go through some really horrible bad things. So I understand that Bella had to go through this really horrible bad thing to come to a different place and really fight for what ended up being her happily ever after. But yeah, I just, when it happened, I mean, I was just like, this doesn't even seem like the way he was talking to her all through Twilight. This doesn't even seem like a decision he would make, so that's how it felt to me. And a little unauthentic, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Heather.
I agree with all that. Really getting deep in thought about that. I would probably have to say with Alice, and kind of tying into Edward and New Moon and pretty much the whole series, it always felt like Edward and Alice had this super hyper, very close connection. He totally understood how her visions worked. She understood how they worked. The family understood how they worked. And yet for some reason in New Moon, she sees Bella jump off a cliff, and then it tumbles into a bunch of misunderstandings that to me they would have already been prepared to handle, I guess. And I kind of just kept feeling that with her power. It felt like it was too chaotic, and it was too kind of the red herring of the series, which I totally get from an author perspective. I understand Stephanie's choices, definitely not hitting on that. But just in terms of things that piss me off were having that keep popping up and being you guys, Edward literally tells you 800 times that it's so her visions are super subjective and totally depends on 1,000 different things. And it's okay, then how come he falls for everything immediately?
Right.
Why is he so susceptible to this? And that kind of trickles into decisions that Edward makes that inevitably kind of make me mad at his character, because I love him to pieces, and he would definitely be my next favorite. But it just the two of them, it just kept causing chaos that would just drive me nuts throughout books and movies and everything. I was just guys, you would just sit down and chat a little bit. This would all be solved. We'd all be fine. So yeah, that'd probably be mine.
Emma, how about you?
I agree so much about Carlisle, especially in that the Bella's early stages of her pregnancy, because there are so many moments in the story up to that point where Carlisle is kind of the voice of reason when it comes to Edward. No, you're not damned. No, you don't have to stay away from this person that you clearly meant to be with. No, you don't have to feel like this. You don't have to do this. He kind of reasons with Edward's chaotic side, and that kind of becomes what knits them together. And then to suddenly switch and take Edward's side when he's clearly being so unreasonable just seems kind of out of character. But I think for me, Jacob was always a favorite character of mine back in the day, and still kind of, I enjoy him, less so. But there are some moments as well with Jacob where I just kind of felt like his role a lot of the time was obviously to push Bella towards Edward, and I fully get that, and it works. It's great. You did that job well. But there's a couple of scenes, the kiss in Eclipse, and then the scene in Breaking Dawn 1 at the wedding. It comes across, it's meant to be protective. It's meant to be a protective, almost older brother, kind of no, you can't do this. You can't be with Edward before your turn because you'll get hurt or die or something terrible. Because obviously he has an inherent distrust for vampires because of who he is and what he is. But it just came across so manipulative and misogynistic and controlling, and it just made me, ugh, no, get away. That's not, you've got no right. And yeah, that kind of works in the scene, but it just didn't feel like the Jacob that I read in the books.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Mel?
So there's not like, it's not like a huge, I absolutely hated her for it, because there's part of me that understood. But Rosalie in Breaking Dawn, after Renesmee is born, she almost takes on this persona of like, I am her mother. Bella has nothing to do with this. And that really bothered me. Like, I understood it because she had already had the discussion of like, now I can't have these human experiences. Plus, she loved her friend Vera's baby Henry. So that kind of like stood out to me as like, okay, you understood that, but now you know Bella has to be this vampire. I get that right now she's going through this change. We don't get to see that part of it. But then right after the fact that she, Bella wakes back up and it's her child, it's not Rosalie's. And that always bothered me, that she took that on like, nope, it's my kid. No, it's definitely not Rosalie.
I always got the impression that from the moment she found out Bella was pregnant, the whole, oh, I'll support you, I'll defend you, it wasn't to protect Bella, it wasn't to do the right thing, it was because she thought it was a way for her to have a kid. She's like, okay, Bella's dead, the kid's mine. She didn't care, she just wanted the baby, and she was with that right the way through.
Yeah, it was a very selfish reason.
I think that was definitely in the back of Rosalie's mind, that if Bella dies and the baby survives.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Edward's gonna go and off himself. So
yeah. So my favorite character that I named was a bad person. So he always was doing bad things. So I had said that my second favorite character was Bella, because I think Bella gets a bad rap, especially from people who say they're feminists, in saying that she's such a horrible woman.
Mary Sue.
Representative of womankind because she was in love with a man. How dare she? I think Bella's a very strong character. I think Bella is a lot stronger than we give her credit for. I teach high school, and I know a lot of 16 and 17-year-old girls that wouldn't be able to handle any of the crap that Bella has to go through. So that being said, one of the things that drives me crazy about Bella, as an adult, looking at the teenager, she totally led Jacob on. She had lost Edward. She didn't want to lose, like, the second best thing would be Jacob. And so, like, to what Mel was saying, that it drove her crazy about you were the ones, who was it saying the kiss? No, that was Emma. Was it you saying Emma? Emma was saying about the kiss and things like that. I can see why Jacob behaved that way, because Bella would not let go. And I know she kept saying, but we're just friends, but she could not let him go. And I have watched teenage girls lead other teenage boys on. I actually had a discussion with a student once that she broke up. It was so Bella and Edward and Jacob. Her boyfriend broke up with her, and she was just in the pits of despair. And this boy that had literally followed her around for a year like a little puppy dog, she immediately clung to him, and they were doing everything together. And I had to take her aside and say, don't you break that boy's heart, because he is in love with you. And if you don't love him, if you aren't going to make this like a boyfriend girlfriend thing, you need to tell him right now. It was, I've seen it. It drives me crazy that Bella did it.
And like, I know Amy and I could both say about the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're rereading Eclipse right now, and there were moments where definitely felt that, but then there are moments where Bella is very clear with Jacob and is like, I mean, flat out says, I see you are part of my family. I am not in love with you like that. I am in love with Jacob. No, don't, like, no to him kissing her, and yet he does it anyway. So even when she does push back and is like asserting herself, he is totally inappropriate.
But then she comes back to him and she says, I could see it. I could see the life with him.
Yeah, and look at what she did in New Moon. I mean, if somebody had spent that much time with you and had been that dependent on you, And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I mean, I don't know. There were some pretty strong signals in New Moon to begin with.
But
So she laid that foundation originally.
But she also says to him in New Moon, like, I'm broken too, and I'm always going to like be attracted to this guy. Like, she does, yes, she's very mixed signals, but there are also moments where she very much asserts herself, and he does not respect her in those moments and does not listen.
I always had a hard time with him in New Moon because it's like, one, she's clearly in a depression, which like taking advantage of that, but also that she's been in this like crazy long-term, like very like toxically close codependent relationship. And like the second Edward leaves, he's like, hey, what's up, girl? And it's like, what? No, if you do that in real life, like that doesn't work out.
Nobody wants to be the rebound.
Yeah, he like is begging to be the rebound. It's like, what are you doing? Are you just looking for a quick hookup here, Jacob? Like, what's your end game? Like,
yeah, give it some time, let it breathe.
Yeah, if he had like pushed Embry on her first or something, and then
that would have been so genius, though.
Yeah.
One of the moments where Jacob, we talked about this, I think the other night. It was like Jacob sees her so clearly at times, like he like sees her in ways like and picks up things that Edward never does. So it's really frustrating that when she is so clear on what she wants or does not want, he suddenly doesn't see and doesn't listen. Because in New Moon, he's pretty observant of her, and even in the beginning of Eclipse, but it kind of gets to the point once he's like, I'm in love with you, that like he just completely ignores anything that he was picking up previously.
Mm-hmm.
All right, is there a character, either from the guide or in the books, is there a character that we still have too many missing moments from and you want more info filled in on them? Okay, Shelley, you get to go first this time.
This is really hard. This is like, I don't know, because it's been so long since I read the book. So I'm going to struggle with this a little bit. But I feel like I remember thinking that we had all of this deep lore about the werewolves and all of this background stuff. And really, but for the Cullens, particularly Esme, I felt like it was really light on their history and their lore. I felt like I really wanted to know more about that world, because that ended up being the world that, Bella was in and wanted to be in. And yeah. So sometimes when when I was rereading all the pages and we were going through all of the werewolf stories around that campfire, that like hours long discussion about all of them, okay, where was our hour-long campfire about Cullens? I don't know. I thought there was missing things there.
I have a feeling Amy's going to agree with you. Mel, you're next.
So I kind of strayed when I was thinking about this question. I kind of strayed from, the main characters that we kind of obviously know need a lot more explanation. And it kind of ties into who I now cosplay as, which is Siobhan from the Irish Coven. Because I have the creative freedom in doing this cosplay. I actually have my own Instagram for her. So I have my own creative freedoms that I can take on it, but I'm just like, am I totally off base in doing this? Like, is there something I'm missing about her? Because I need to know more. Like, I just want a whole book.
That's cool. Yeah.
Which is another question. Hold that thought. Amy.
Mel does an awesome job as Siobhan, and I don't question your authenticity at all. Others out there, I don't. I absolutely agree on Esme. And, I've said this before, I think with the Cullens, I mean, we get this official guide and we kind of get like their human backgrounds, and we kind of get up to, and they get changed to become part of the Cullen family. And then what happens? What happens between like 1921 and like the Bella showing up in Forks for Esme or for any of them? We really, other than once they get turned, we don't know anything that happened with the family. And that is like, to me, the huge missing piece is how the Cullens really become a family, how they interact with each other. That is the thing that I would like. I've said before, I don't want a Renesmee Jacob book. I want that book.
Yeah. Let's see. Wait, who was next? Who's it? Heather.
I agree with everybody. I feel like my instinct is to say any of the Cullens, just like any. But I actually really, I would love to see Jane and Alec. Like, I'm fascinated by them in the book, and I felt like it was teased in the movies. But just like any of the Volturi, but like specifically them, I felt like, how did you get here? Why are you here? Like, I want to know every single detail of like why you feel so like evil now, and like why you've adapted this so aggressively, and just like, yeah, anything with them would just be fascinating for me.
Emma.
So this is this is one of those topics that it's a huge thing. Like I think about it all the time. And somebody in the comments just put about the Romanian in the Coven and their history. And yes, because I'm really, really big on like the classic Dracula myth and all of that. And it just, that was obviously what Stephanie was going for. And I just would love to see more about that. But the one thing for me that really stood out, especially in the movies, that I felt like there's so much that it just felt like wasted potential, was when Alice and Jasper left and went looking for Nahuel and or just answers in general. There's so much there. There's so much in the Amazon. There's so much in their travels, and these are two fantastic characters. And it just felt like this is just missing piece. That there's so much that we don't know that would make brilliant storytelling. And it's, yes, all of the Cullens and so many of the other vampires and other characters have got this great history that we just don't know about. But it just felt like this bit that was current in the story but empty, like a black hole, and it just, it frustrates me so much.
That was actually my answer, because I said,
I'm sorry.
well, the Romanian one, I'm so fascinated with villains. I would love to see the Romanians to the Volturi, like that war, that battle. Oh, that would be really awesome. Just because before we went live on YouTube, I said that my favorite line or moment ever in the Twilight saga is when Stefan, am I vampire diarying it? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
When he's
both work.
Like, I imagine we'll take advantage of that when we gouge out their eyes. And Bella's like, okay, I'm gonna move the child away from vampires. I just, and I didn't feel like we got enough of them in the movie. And so I would love to see something Volturi, Romanian, just bad vampires fighting bad vampires. Who do you root for?
No.
Romanians and the Volturi. I don't know. They're both equally as creepy, but there's so many of, like, Garrett. I would love Garrett's story. Alistair. I would love Alistair's story. So, I mean, there's so many of those characters that I would love more and more and more from. Wait, did I skip you, Amy?
No.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I started thinking, did I skip? Okay, so who do you wish, what minor character, has to be a little character, so it can't be a Cullen or a Jacob. What minor character do you wish had their own book? Like, instead of Bree Tanner, who should have their book? Who should have their own book? We are starting with Emma.
There's so many, but the ones that stand out for me, I'm a sucker for a bad guy as well. I always have been. I'm a huge Buffy fan, and I will always be in love with Spike, always. But yes, but for me there was just so, and Caius, because Jamie Campbell Bower was such a great actor in the movies, and he brought so much menacing quality to a character that had relatively few lines, and there was just a lot there, and it like, where's his history? Where's all of it? There's just, I want to know.
Yep. Shelley, you're next.
Well, I was originally going to say Charlie, because can you imagine a book from his perspective? Like, got divorced, daughter came and lived with you, and then all these really weird things started happening, and it's like
she watched a boy turn into a dog.
Yeah, I mean, that could be really funny and interesting. It's kind of like Ron Swanson meets Twilight. I don't know. So that was like my first thought, because I thought, really nobody and book Charlie, no, it would have to be like Billy Burke Charlie. But anyway, but also, was it Mel who said Jane and Alec, how interesting they are? And I'm thinking about that now, and having a book about the Volturi and their horrible and bloody history. I know it'd be like a horror book or something like that, but I think I'd be okay with it because they were really interesting characters, and I felt like when you read them, you knew that there was a lot more going on than we were getting to see.
Yep. Mel.
So obviously, I kind of answered that in the last question, Siobhan. But honestly, the entire Irish coven, like once they finally, because Maggie's the last one that joins, basically because Siobhan finds her left for dead during the potato famine. I would just love to see how they go from, it's just Siobhan to then Liam comes along. Siobhan never thought she was going to be someone that was in love, because she didn't grow up that way. She was essentially a blacksmith. And then to find Maggie, who's just this petite little thing. And how do you go from like those two extremes and then continue living a nomad life? Like, I don't know what it is. And I think part of it too is because of how well, especially Lisa and Patrick played the characters in the film. There wasn't a whole lot there, but they were just so like kind of right in your face, and you're just like, I can't ignore them.
And they did so much research. Having spoken to them as actors, they did so much. They knew who those people were, even though we only saw like just a little bit. Amy,
you okay? Well, it's funny because you just said don't use the Cullens, but I'm like, Esme gets treated like a rather minor character with a lack of story, a lack of not on anything, and like her big line is like, "Welcome to the family. You're part of the family now. Family." So I said in that case, like, I've written Esme fan fiction to try and fill in the blanks. I've just actually started doing again. I have Ask Esme Cullen on Tumblr, where like answer questions from her perspective. So there's a strong feeling there. But thinking of not a Cullen, I was actually thinking of the Denali's, which I know like we just heard such not happiness about the Denali's, but there's such a long history there, and kind of the story of how these women went from like being vampires, bloodsuckers, or feasting on humans, to making the decision to change and find the vegetarian lifestyle, and also like ignoring the guide. Like originally, if I remember correctly, Lori, supposedly Carlisle met them earlier in like the original sort of pre-guide stuff. So I think the guide says that Carlisle doesn't meet them until after like Esme and Edward suffer with them. But think back, the original intent or whatever Stephanie originally said was that Carlisle met them before he ever had a family. And so kind of like what that meant to him finding them, and then Carmen and Eleazar are coming into it. I just like feel like there's so much there that kind of like they've had this life that's similar in some ways to the Cullens, but also they've been in this one place for so long. There's a lot to unpack.
And Eleazar being able to leave the Volturi.
Yeah, that too, and Carmen, and like there's just that whole group. There's a lot of history there, and kind of how they all found each other. Like, love to kind of unpack all that.
Heather.
I feel like I'm gonna go totally off the wall here and say Mike Newton, but with like the caveat that I would just love a perspective from a human of the Cullens that's just like totally unaware. And I think he's like the perfect person to just get like the most insane perspective on them and just be like, what does he truly think of Edward? Like what does he think of Edward and Bella's relationship? Like if you took the whole like first Twilight book, but maybe like 6 months before Bella shows up too, and just gave me Mike, I would love that. He'd probably annoy the hell out of me, but like I would love it.
Okay, so I have 2 for this one. If you are a close friend of mine, you know that I'm obsessed with Egypt. And if I could go anywhere in the world and not have to worry about finances, it would be to Egypt. I want to see the pyramids with my own eyes. So the Egyptian coven actually fascinates me, and how they all work together and their creation. So I would love more on the Egyptian coven. But I also have thought along the same lines of you, Heather, when I was reading Breaking Dawn, I almost wrote a fan fiction of like the life of Jay Jinx.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to read that.
Like the 5 different times that he had dealings with the Cullens, and like
That's awesome.
he starts out as like a
Absolutely.
young man, and as he's getting older, and these people, you know, and they never age, and they always have buku bunches of money, and they always seem to know stuff. And yeah, I think that would be a really interesting perspective from someone who has something to do with their lives and knows who they are, but then is like, wait, what's going on here? And the money that gets slid under the table, and you know, like, just don't say anything, and then going home and having to explain it. Oh, well, you know, I did this, that, or the other. You know, I think that would be fun. That'd be kind of fun. Is there a minor character fact or moment that stands out to you that we haven't talked about, or a character that we haven't discussed that you think needs like a little recognition right now? So any other character that we haven't talked about, that there's even if it's like just one little moment, you're like, I loved it when this character did this. So we'll start with Amy.
Oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? I'm trying to think of like a different character.
A different character. Yeah, you can't say Carlisle or Esme this time.
Yeah, no, I know. I would say
Like,
there
can I
was.
come back to you?
Yeah, come back to me.
Think about it. Mel, do you have something?
Honestly, because I feel like we don't get enough of the explanation, Leah, because she dated Sam, and then Sam imprinted on Emily, who was her own cousin.
Ugh.
And it was, I would just love to get something from her perspective where she can either make some understanding of it, or she can just be like, okay, like, I'm over it, move on. Like, and then further, does she eventually, because I mean, we kind of get left hanging, like what actually happens to the pack after Breaking Dawn. I kind of wonder if she just is like, man, I'm done, I'm out, like, I'm gonna go off on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one.
Amy thought of one.
Okay. Now remember this. So in New Moon, as Bella's trying to figure out what's going on with Jacob, and she's driving out to La Push, and she runs into, is it Quill? It's the last one to change? Is it
Yes.
Quill or Avery? Quill. Quill is like walking by himself down the side of the road, looking super sad. And she picks him up, and he's like, you know, what's going on? And he's so sad because like he's trying to figure out why all his friends have abandoned him. And he's like, I was running around the woods for like an hour trying to catch up with them and couldn't. So now he's like walking back to La Push by himself. And he doesn't know what's going on. We just wanted to give him such a big hug. It was like, poor Will. So and then once he actually becomes one, he's so happy. He is like the happiest werewolf ever. So like watching his character, which you saw like none of that in the movies, but like this whole moment of just having such like sympathy for his character, and then watching him kind of just be so happy just to be with his friends. He doesn't even care about being a wolf. He just is back with his friends and he knows what's going on.
Emma, how about you?
We've briefly touched on how great of a character Garrett was and how brilliant Lee Pace was, and yes, 100%. But the thing that kind of I always felt like, oh, I needed more, was the stuff between Garrett and Tanya. Like, obviously I'm a sucker for a love story, but like that had so much potential, and it just, I always, those little moments where he's like, I'll follow you anywhere, and all that kind of stuff is so sweet and wonderful. And oh, there's just so much spice there, and it would have made such a good story. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Kate though.
Was it? Oh yeah.
Heather.
Getting mixed up.
I was gonna say Tanya, just for her relationship / not with Edward. But I actually, and I feel like maybe I'm remembering this wrong because I honestly haven't read Breaking Dawn in a very long time, but I wanted more with Renee. It felt like Charlie gets all this closure and is going to be still around and is going to just accept that she's this thing that he doesn't understand. He knows Jake's a wolf. It felt like that was really like tied up with a bow for me to feel okay with it. But like, is Renee just like never coming around again? Are we only like video chatting her with a filter? Like, what's the like? It just didn't, for me, feel like that was closed up in a way that I wanted, and I would have liked to have had a bit more of just like, how are we handling that? Because it's another parent that you clearly talk to a lot. You went to visit, like, I don't know. I realize that she's kind of an absentee mother anyway with Phil and like, bleh, but still, it was, it still felt like something that I wanted to kind of just have a bit more, especially where Edward had been like, everybody you know will be dead in 100 years. It's fine. And it's like, okay, but it's not 100 years yet. So how are we handling this?
Shelley.
Gosh, I don't know. I've been sitting here trying to think about like, who did I really feel like I wish had more like screen time or book time that I had learned more about. And I can't think of any other additional like small characters. I feel like you guys have really pulled out some really good ones. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about them. So I don't really know.
So are you passing?
I'm passing because I don't know.
Are you passing? I was actually going to say Renee, because I agree with Heather that I'd like to see the moment where Renee sees Bella as a vampire for the first time and sees her granddaughter for the first time. Because if anyone knows what their see, Charlie recognized that the baby, well, okay, not Chuck Esme from the movie, but the baby in the book, that the baby looked like Bella. But nobody recognizes their child in something else the way that a parent does. And so, I can look at pictures of bunches of kids and immediately go, oh yeah, that was, my kid's in that picture from years ago. I mean, you spot them like that. So I'd like to see her see the baby for the first time, and
if I liked that character enough, but I disliked that character so much that, I just thought her decisions as a mother were horrible. I couldn't understand pretty much anything about her, and I thought she was kind of stupid. So I'm sorry. And so, there is legitimacy to that, but I just don't care enough about her to want to see. Whatever, too bad for you. You gave up your daughter.
But does she ever get to meet Bella and Renesmee? Because I thought that, like, to her, Bella was going to be dead.
That's
like,
what I thought too.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I wasn't sure. I can't remember how that was like tied up. I that's what I thought it was, but also it just felt like that wasn't appropriate given how they handled it with Charlie. Like, it kind
right. I don't think that Charlie would have acted like that Bella was dead to Renee ever. No. So I just don't think he would have.
On the flip side of that, I also liked the budding romantic triangle between Charlie and Sue Clearwater.
Sue, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I also like that. I'm the sucker for the romance.
Yep.
I also agree. Someone in the comments said Gianna with like, I like totally agree with that too. I'm finally catching up to the chat. So sorry, everybody in the chat.
Can I say just one other character we haven't really talked about, who is like a main character, which is Emmett?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we've been talking, kind of talking, revisiting him too. Like, Emmett in the book is just said like the levity for the family. Like, he really is kind of like the one who kind of like, everything's so tense, and he's like, dude, like, chill, like, says something like fun or funny. Whereas like a lot of the delivery or the lines in the movies, it's often like made him to seem almost dumb. And I don't think he's dumb. I think he's just this warm personality. And again, kind of like Esme, you don't learn his story at all, really, other than he was attacked by a bear when Rosalie's telling her story in clips. So like, that's another one where it's like, he's kind of one that I don't think we've mentioned at all, really, tonight.
Yeah.
I think because Emmett is who just he is. There's not much to his story. He was just a good old country boy living his life, doing his thing, and he got attacked by a bear. I think the reason he comes off so chill is that he had such a chill life. You know, they had daily struggles that any family does, but he didn't have, you know, he wasn't burned at the stake for witchcraft, and you know, he didn't have all of this doom and gloom surrounding him. He didn't have all the pressure like Rosalie had, or he wasn't electric shock treatment like Alice, or, you know, he didn't have these horrible things happening in his life. He was just living his life, and oops, got killed by a bear. It was a very natural death that could have happened to any person living out in the countryside. And so I think that's a good point. That's why Emmett is so chill, because his life was just, I just was living a normal life, and I liked my family. And now I'm a vampire and I get this hot girl. Yeah, we're all good.
He was definitely really chill, and he did serve sometimes as kind of almost the comic relief. But there were moments in, for example, the wedding speech where that was so well done, where he didn't come across like the jock. He came across like the hilarious older brother who knew things. Yeah. Like, and it was so good.
Oh, see, and I hate that. I cringe at that speech.
That's the whole point, but it works.
It doesn't work for me. It just seems like, again, like something where it's making him a little bit too much of the frat boy jock, like dumb, versus Sid. I don't think he's dumb. I think he's just chill, as Lori said, and I don't, that doesn't necessarily mesh.
I don't know whether it was in the writing or in the character being played when Kellen was, but it always came across like he almost played into the dumb jock thing, like that was the role he adopted as I'm going to go through high school however many times. That's what fit him, and that's what he went with.
But he couldn't be the jock because he couldn't play sports. So, but like the dating the older woman hot thing, and it's always like, even in that moment, they all look at him like, you're dumb, like, and that's totally a film thing versus like the way that he kind of delivers the things in the books and the moments. It's just him being set like levity to a situation.
So did we get around to I should note that one of the first things that I ever talked to Stephanie about, just based off of Twilight, you have to remember all we had was Twilight, so remove every other bit of knowledge, and we didn't have movies, and we didn't have guides or anything like that. One of the first conversations I had with Stephanie, I will admit this, was, can you tell me a few different things about Emmett and Jasper? Because to me, they just they're the other two guy vampires.
I can see that.
And of course, they've completely, they're so completely opposite from each other. But at the very, just on one or two readings of Twilight, I was like, and there's those other two vampires. Which one was it? Was that Jasper or was that Emmett? I can't remember. Which one's which? That's my admittance that I couldn't keep them straight. It's embarrassing to admit that now, but I couldn't. And the humans were all like, oh, there's the humans again.
Yeah.
Humans.
I think the one other thing that I would mention is that I would honestly love, and I can't even name all of them, but literally anybody who has some kind of special ability, what was their human life like that then, because their gifts are all amplified, because were there any of them that were like Alice, where she got put in an asylum because her dad thought she was nuts? So I would love to see that from any character that had a special ability.
And you wonder how many of them didn't even know, because Bella didn't even know she was special until she came across a vampire that could read her mind.
Yeah.
She thought something was wrong with her brain.
That's what's interesting. I tell you I can read minds and you think something's wrong with you.
love that.
That's a good
All
one.
right. So if you could get a chapter or a book or something from another character's perspective, do you want like an entire book from another character's perspective, or do you just want a moment from another character's perspective? What would you want from someone else's perspective? We will start with Mel.
Right, now that I've had like an hour to think about this even further, I honestly would love to see Alice's actual perspective, both going to and coming home from Volterra. I would love to know what her thought process actually was, because she was so, especially on the way to Volterra, she was so just frantically going through every scenario. But I would love to like know that from her perspective, what that looked like or what that felt like.
Heather?
This is like the most unoriginal, and I know that, but Edward through all of Breaking Dawn. Just that I just want his whole, I want to know what he's thinking during biting the pillows. I want to know when they're in the water. I want to know when
you want to know what's going on in his mind when he's having sex?
Just literally,
Yes.
Mother, okay? Give me the lemons, please. So.
More lemons.
I remember talking to Stephanie about the fact that she always fades to black, and she's like, "Yeah, I couldn't write that," and I'm like, "I could. You want me to write it for you?"
I love that. I could.
Write that for you, because I don't have any shame in that. Amy.
So as we've been doing rereads, there's been moments where, especially since the Midnight Sun announcement, of like, we want this chapter by somebody else's perspective, or want to know what's going on. One of the things that stood out recently was when Jasper's telling his backstory. There are moments where he edits himself. And so I would love to know, like, let's get deeper into that. And what are those things that he is choosing to edit out about his time with Maria and the newborns army?
Interesting. That'd be really interesting. Shelley.
Well, Mel actually took my answer at first, and I was like, Alice, because you get to see, I mean, don't you wonder the whole time you're reading it what she's seeing that she's not telling everybody that she's seen? And you'd be able to see so much. And then I thought, of course, Edward. Of course. But now that I think about it, the person who gets to see everything that everybody has seen is Aro. So to have at least a chapter or even a whole book of Aro saying, I touched them and I saw boom, and you get to see like everything. Yes. All of this hidden stuff you didn't get to see, Aro is going to have seen it.
Emma?
I struggle to think of one that I haven't read a fan fiction of, or that wasn't in the books, or something that I feel like I didn't get in some way. But I agree about Aro, come to think of it, because how would you even write that? How would you even write something so menacing and like twisted in such an odd way, like compounded by all of that time and obviously a complete lack of conscience and just everybody else's information? He's like the classical vampire. He can take people's lives into him. Classically in Dracula, for example, it's by drinking their blood and taking their memories in, but he can actually do it. And it's just, I want to know what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we technically do get a moment of that in Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it's just
but I would totally take more.
Yeah, it's just
Yes.
it's just that little moment, and to think about seeing it like in New Moon, the first time he sees like Bella and all of that. Yeah, I'd really like to know what was going on and what he was seeing.
That's why he's my favorite.
That's
why he's my favorite. So let's see, me. Who would I want that hasn't been said? Let me try to think. I still wish she would release the scene in Forever Dawn where Edward hears Renesmee in the womb, because we have that from Jacob's perspective. I wish she would release it. She wrote it from Bella's perspective. I wish she would release that. I think fans would really like that.
That's cool. That would be cool.
What else do I like from another person's perspective? I don't know.
Just like all of Arrow's shenanigans from Marcus's perspective.
Marcus doesn't care. He doesn't care.
He's just so sick of Arrow's bullshit. Now he's just like, ugh.
Everything that I can think of that I'd love to read, like I would love to read about Arrow killing his sister. I think I said it in chat that I need a shirt that says Didym's final words. I am so telling mom. I think I'm gonna take what I expected Amy's answer to be. I think it'd be interesting to see Carlisle and Esme's like husband-wife conversations at night. Like, well, so what do you think of what Edward is doing? Do we let this happen?
Come up with something different. But yeah, I think that too.
Yeah. Well, is there any other question, any other part of character chat that we haven't covered that we need to cover? Any questions from the chat that we haven't?
I will say, as someone who constantly defends Kristen Stewart's way of portraying Bella, that I really feel like she nailed it, and that it is so hyper accurate to the book. And whether or not people want to associate that with her, I think she carried that vision over from book to movie really well and stayed really strong with it throughout all the movies, and like kind of carried that aura of like being strong and being a lot more tough than she seems. Because I wasn't as big a fan of Bella in the books. I did not like her. I just was kind of like, well, like, okay, we get it. You don't want people to spend money on you and like do things for you. Like, it's fine. Like, it's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be your personality trait. It's gonna be okay. And I just really liked how she took that and made it feel a bit more real and kind of tangible.
Yeah, a little more authentic because she was awkward. So she, be that awkward teen. Yeah.
She's very good at being awkward.
She is.
I still want to see Bella running hurdles. That would be hilarious.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
I want more Bella Emmett fighting, honestly, as a newborn. We're gonna talk about Emmett here.
Someone said Charlie and Edward fighting after Bella's return from Italy. That they'd like to see that moment.
It would be fun watching Edward trying to hold his nerve.
Well, there is like a publicity still of Alice and Edward outside of the Mercedes, and like one of them's holding Bella's backpack and Charlie's on the steps. So the thought is that was returning Bella after they got back from Italy, so that there may be a scene somewhere in the can that we haven't seen of that moment.
As a parent, anyone that hurts your kid, you don't want them around your kid anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He hurt her, and Charlie had to live with it.
So this was our discussion the other night about Jacob, is that, as she's saying no, Jacob kisses her. She punches him. They get back to the house, and she's going in there getting ice for her hand. And it's like, what happened? And Jacob says, I kissed her. And his response, as his daughter standing there with her hand in ice, is, good job. Like, great job, kid. Like, good for you. I'm like, that to me that was like the worst Charlie moment in the entire saga of like, this
it's better in the movie. It's better in the movie.
It is better in the movie, but it is like, wow, this boy forced himself on your daughter. She punched him in response. She is now standing here with possibly a broken hand, and you're like, good for you, kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's such an odd moment because to go from, it's so biased because to go from one side, you've got Charlie ready to cock the shotgun on their first date, and then Jacob kisses him. What? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So
any other character moments? Chat, I'm throwing it out to you guys, and I know because of the delay, we have to wait a minute. Are there any other, because when I'm saying it, they don't hear it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Is there any other characters that we didn't talk about that need to be talked about for those of you that are watching? Let it ruminate for a minute and see if anybody wants any other characters.
I do find it was weird that we got so much on Riley instead of like an Esme or Carlisle or Emmett. It was just like
See, Amy's fist in the air.
Trying to go fist in the air for Carlisle and Esme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Sid, when the official guide came out, it's funny because I've said this in a couple last weeks that like I've been going back and looking at stuff on like my Tumblr that I posted however many years ago. And I found like a thing where I was talking about like, well, this is what I'm happy about the guide so far. And this is what I'm not happy about with the guide so far. And a lot of it is because said things kind of fluctuated between what I refer to as my Bible, which is the Twilight Lexicon, correspondence with Stephanie Meyer. And then the stories were a little bit different, but I was like, Esme's one is like a couple pages, and then you have like this much about Victoria, like, or some other like the characters that are in these other covens, and you're like, I didn't really learn much of anything new about Esme that I didn't already know. It's been changed a little bit from what was said in the course, you know, the correspondence about Esme's story. But yeah, I mean, there are characters in here in the official guide that we learned so much about. And then it's like, I want to learn more about the Cullens.
Right.
So do I talk or do I not?
Do it.
So for anyone who might be watching this, Laura and I helped work on the official guide, and for our first time through, we included everything that Stephanie had ever sent us, and we had a series of questions because they were like, now's the time to ask questions that we never even dared ask. We asked Stephanie, hey, just tell us this, tell us that. And we like cut and pasted all of her answers into the document and said, this is everything. This is everything. And the first edit that came back to us was about, like, they cut out half of the things that we had put in there. And we were like, you're cutting the stuff that people want to know, and you're leaving the stuff in that they already know. People want to know this. Why are you keep cutting this? And even there, I even have some notes from Stephanie where it says, why did you cut this? Just put it in word for word the way that I wrote it originally. And we're like, we did. They cut it. The editors cut it. And so there are a couple of things that I still have, stories that I have on my computer, that little moments here and there that were cut from the final version. I did not see the guide before it went to print. I sent them like our first draft, and then they sent us the edits. We said, you need to put this all back in. And that was really the last time I had anything to do with it. And so there were some things. There are some things.
That's
and
like
there were things that ended up in the guide that I knew nothing about. So, I mean, if you want me to get going on Jasper's timeline, is just
And Rosalie too is all.
not my fault. Not my fault. I even had a note that said, Jasper's timeline doesn't make sense. Please have Stephanie fix it. And then the guide came out and it's even worse. It's even worse. So yeah, I'm probably gonna get slapped with a libel suit now. But there were some questions that I still had in the guide, but
I mean, honestly, Lori, that's what it's like working with the studios, period.
Mhm.
I mean, being an official licensee, and you're like, well, the fans want to see this. I know that this will sell like crazy. Why aren't we doing this? And you're just not allowed to. And we don't even get to know all of the reasons. I mean, they have their reasons. There had to be reasons behind why they took some of the things out. Like, were they thinking, hey, we'll hold it in the can for another guide maybe, or you know, that never came to fruition. You just don't get to know those things, you know.
I mean, the first edit back was basically they chopped all of Alice's story out, and we were like, what?
Yeah.
And I just cut and paste it right back in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if I have to defend anything, it's this story. This story's staying in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yup. Yeah, like we had, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop now. before I get in trouble. Somebody says, I see your chaos and I raise you a crap show. Lori kills me. Well, I probably just killed myself. So, but some of those things, I think we're excited. That's part of the reason why we're excited to get Midnight Sun, is to get another perspective on it. And I hope we get a bunch more Cullen information, because who's he with for half the book? The Cullens, or peeping Tom on Bella. But hopefully we get much more information, especially as he's hearing their thoughts and knowing what they're thinking and feeling. So I can't wait. Anybody want to talk about that?
There's so many moments that you don't get with them, because you get Bella's perspective and you just get kind of, they're more closed off, don't let the outside world in. Even when she's in their home with them, it's kind of like, this person is a danger, this person is not like us, this person is a risk, so stay quiet. And there's so many like intimate little special moments that like where they are being themselves that would have been so good to see. And I really hope that Edward gets that that we get that in the book, because Edward's one of the only people who can ever really see that. And he must have so much stuff in his head that, number one, is really not supposed to be there, and number two, that would be really hilarious and fascinating and intricate, and just add so much nuance to those characters. I fully agree.
Well, I mean, like Peter and Charlotte barely get anything in the books.
Yeah.
Yet we're going to see them. We're going to get a little bit more, or at least I hope we get a little bit more of Peter and Charlotte in Midnight Sun.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's who he's warning her about, basically. Well,
Yeah.
that is all of the questions that we have for tonight. We want to remind everybody that Amy and Mel do Twilight Tuesdays. And did you figure out what chapter you're on?
19, 20, and 21 of Eclipse this Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific. You can log into Instagram Live. Oh My Carlisle.
That's not Fire and Ice, is it?
No, we stopped right before Fire and Ice, because we'll start next time with Fire and Ice.
Yes, we were like, that's gonna take an hour to unpack. So
okay. And on July 24th, we're with Fickle Fish Films and the novel. It's at the NOVL, the novel, are hosting a live tweet where we're supposed to watch Twilight, and we're going to tweet, and it's the Lexicon and Amanda Bell and Amy, Oh My Carlisle, and Hypable and the Cool Table and Fangirlish. But I think anybody who's online and tweeting about that will use those, like the hashtags and all of that. I'll have to put that on the Lexicon to make sure that everybody knows what hashtags to use. But that is on July 24th, between 6 to 8 Eastern Standard Time. I'm not even sure what time that is for you, Emma.
I'm 5 hours ahead of EST, 8 hours of Western. So yeah, that's not so bad.
So, but it's still in the middle of the night.
I'm a night owl anyway. I'm always awake.
It's, what is it, 2 a.m. to you?
Right now it's like 20 to 3.
Oh my gosh.
But that's honestly fine. When we're done here, I'm probably going to go back to killing zombies.
Love it. Well, that is all that I have. I don't know if we're going to do this next week. My son graduates next week, and I have some things. I got a lot of stuff going on next week.
That must be so difficult for that to happen on a year like this.
So his graduation is right around the corner from this, and so I don't think my brain will be in chat mode. So I'm not sure if we will chat next week. If Laura can take over and run the technical side of things, then we might, but it doesn't look good. So we might be taking a week off and come back the last week in July, which then gives us, when is the 4th? When does Midnight Sun come out?
Midnight Sun comes out the 4th. So we have the week of July 20th, 27th, and then August 3rd if we were to do Monday.
Yeah, Midnight Sun comes out on a Twilight Tuesday.
Yes. So we're gonna have a lively night that night. You will
Okay.
not want to miss that one.
So I'm probably going to say we're not going to chat next week. So we won't see everybody again until the 23rd and maybe the 30th if we stick to Thursday. Trying to find a night that everybody can get together has been really difficult. But that we will do our best. But thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you all for chatting with me tonight, and for all of the people that were online watching. We will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.